The moment I saw my name tag at my son's wedding reception, I understood exactly what Vanessa Sterling Williams thought of me. Dorothy Williams, the charity case. The words were written in her flawless calligraphy, looped and elegant on a piece of creamy cardstock. Around me, members of the Sterling clan burst into delighted laughter, the kind they saved for the cruelest jokes. I pinned the tag to my navy blue dress, the one that had seemed tasteful and appropriate until I'd stood beside their couture gowns, and smiled as if it were all terribly amusing. Then I excused myself, calm and polite, and stepped away to make a single phone call. By morning they would learn what real charity looks like. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're tuning in from. Let me rewind, because this story really begins 6 months before that humiliating Saturday evening in June. My son Michael had fallen hopelessly in love with Vanessa Sterling, a stunning 29-year-old from Old Connecticut money, the sort of money that underwrites museum wings and puts dead relatives' names on library facades. When he first brought her to my home, I saw her reaction the moment she walked through my front door. Her beautifully sculpted face tightened as she studied my small living room. The worn sofa, mismatched chairs, and family photos in cheap frames from the drugstore. "How quaint," she said, honey dripping from her voice. "It's so refreshing to see someone who isn't obsessed with material things." Even then it was obvious she meant the opposite. But Michael's eyes shone with happiness, and at 42 he deserved love. If only he'd seen beneath that polished exterior to the ice underneath. Love, as I've learned in my 68 years, can turn the wisest men into fools. The engagement party was my first true glimpse of what I was facing. Held at the Sterling estate in Greenwich, it was a spectacle of wealth that made my head spin. Crystal chandeliers hung from hand-painted ceilings I recognized from museum labels. Guests drifted from room to room discussing yacht clubs, European summers, and charity galas I would never be invited to. Michael's future mother-in-law, Patricia Sterling, introduced me to her friends with the air of someone forced to acknowledge an unfortunate detail in an otherwise perfect picture. "She's from Ohio," she told them. The way she said Ohio, you'd think it was a war-torn backwater. I smiled, praised the hors d'oeuvres, and pretended not to notice how conversations died the moment I approached. I stayed quiet for a reason. Some games are won with patience. And I have always been very, very patient. As the wedding planning progressed, their contempt became harder to ignore. Every decision was made without me, even when I offered to help. When I suggested contributing to the rehearsal dinner, Patricia actually laughed. "Oh, Dorothy, how sweet," she cooed. "But we couldn't possibly let you strain your limited resources. This is going to be quite expensive, you understand." Limited resources. If only she'd known. I continued to play my part, the struggling widow taking on cleaning jobs and odd work to survive. It wasn't entirely a lie. I had done those things, just not in the last 3 years, not since my Harold died and left me his little empire. The Sterlings didn't need to know about that. Not yet. Michael did his best to include me. He called with updates about venues and menu tastings, apologizing for events I mysteriously wasn't invited to. "Mom, I'm sure it was just an oversight," he'd say when I mentioned the cake tasting or the florist meeting. "Vanessa's been so stressed with all the planning." Stressed. I could imagine how exhausting it must be to plan a $200,000 wedding, while simultaneously orchestrating ways to keep your future mother-in-law out of every room. The bridal shower revealed more than any balance sheet ever could. I wasn't on the original guest list, of course. Only when Michael insisted. It would mean so much to Mom. Did Vanessa extend a last-minute invitation, the kind that makes it very clear you're only welcome because someone insisted? I arrived at the country club with a modest gift. A simple crystal vase from Macy's. Appropriate for a woman in my supposed financial condition. The other presents were extravagant. Hermes scarves, Tiffany jewelry, silk lingerie that probably cost more than my rent had once been. When Vanessa unwrapped my gift, she held the vase with 2 fingers, as if she'd found it in the gutter. "How practical," she announced. "Every bride needs something from the discount store." The laughter that followed wasn't warm. It was sharp and satisfied, the sound wealthy people make when they've confirmed their belief that someone is beneath them. I smiled, sipped my champagne, and memorized faces. Every woman who laughed. Every smirk. Every glance. Information I've found is much more valuable than pride. The wedding day itself was flawless. Blue sky, soft breeze, perfect light for the photographers. The Sterling estate looked like a fairy tale. The gardens trimmed within an inch of their lives, white roses climbing trellises, string quartets perched discreetly among hedges. I'll give them this. Whatever its source, money can certainly buy beauty. I had chosen my outfit deliberately. A navy blue dress from Nordstrom Rack. Simple, clean lines, nothing flashy. Nothing that might compete with the bride or invite attention from the photographers. I wanted to disappear. Being underestimated is a powerful position. The ceremony was genuinely moving. Watching Michael's face as Vanessa walked down the aisle in her $15,000 Vera Wang gown, I almost allowed myself to believe I'd misjudged her. That love might yet soften her. Then during the ring exchange, she caught my eye and gave me a look so cold it could have chilled champagne. The reception is where everything snapped into focus. I found my seat at table 12, naturally tucked near the kitchen doors, surrounded by Michael's college buddies and their wives. Not with family. Family occupied table 1, where the Sterlings held court like minor royalty. I didn't mind. Placed me perfectly for what I had in mind. That's when I noticed the name tags. Each place setting, adorned with Vanessa's elegant script. Patricia Sterling. James Sterling. Michael Williams. And then mine, Dorothy Williams, the charity case. My breath caught, not from pain but from the sheer nerve of it. She hadn't just thought it. She'd written it down and put it on proud display. Oh my goodness! Patricia gasped theatrically when she saw it, hand flying to her throat. Vanessa, darling, surely this is some kind of mistake. Vanessa's smile was razor sharp. No mistake at all. I just think honesty is important in family relationships. Her gaze locked with mine across the table. Don't you agree, Dorothy? We wouldn't want anyone getting ideas above their station. Richard Sterling's booming laugh came first, and others followed eagerly. Half the table was soon chuckling, delighted by the clever cruelty of humiliating the groom's mother at her own son's wedding. I rose slowly, eased the tag off the table, and set it carefully on my purse. You're absolutely right, Vanessa, I said pleasantly. Honesty is vital in families. I think it's time for a little honesty all around. Then I walked away. The Sterling Estate's library was almost a parody of wealth. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined with leather-bound volumes that probably cost more per book than most people's car payments. It was the perfect place to make the call that would change everything. I didn't tremble as I dialed. Irerlido. Emotion has its place, but when action is required, I prefer precision. Robert, it's Dorothy. I know it's Saturday evening, but I need you to execute the Sterling portfolio adjustments we discussed. All of them. Tonight. Robert Hayes had been my attorney for 15 years, long before Harold died and left me his business holdings. He was one of the few who knew exactly how much the little empire was worth. Dorothy, are you certain? He asked, concern clear in his voice. Once we pull those investments, there's no reversing it. The ripple effects will be substantial. I'm very certain. And Robert? Activate the accelerated payment clauses on all Sterling Holdings loans. Every last one. He paused. That will trigger immediate default. Richard Sterling won't have 72 hours to respond. 48 will be plenty, I said, watching guests mingle on the terrace through the window. Champagne flutes capturing the last of the daylight. We wouldn't want to be unreasonable. And if they tried to negotiate? I thought of my name tag, of the laughter, of 3 years of quiet positioning and research leading to this moment. Tell them, I said calmly. The charity case sends her regards. I ended the call, then slipped back into the reception as if nothing had happened. I kissed Michael, congratulated the happy couple, and endured Vanessa's smug glow as guests praised her refreshing honesty. She had no idea she just lit the fuse on her own financial collapse. Leaving so soon? She asked lightly as I approached the head table. We haven't even cut the cake. I'm sure you'll manage without me, I replied. You're very good at making do with less. Her laugh tinkled like fragile glass. Oh, Dorothy, you're such a delight. I do hope we can keep this understanding between us. Oh, we have an understanding now, I said. She believed it meant she could humiliate me without consequences. I, on the other hand, had just demonstrated exactly who I was beneath my simple dress and discount store persona. She just didn't know it yet. The next morning, I sat on my little balcony with a cup of coffee and waited. By my calculations, the first notification would hit Richard's inbox around 8 a.m. Banks don't rest when billions are on the line, not even on Sundays. People like to say money talks. In my experience, it whispers. The power lies in recognizing which whispers matter. Harold had taught me that over our 35 years together, as he expanded his one-room office into a financial empire stretching across the East Coast. When he died 3 years ago, everyone assumed I would sell. A widow in her 60s, they figured, would cash out, buy a Florida condo, and live off interest. They didn't expect me to step into his role and discover that I had an instinct for spotting fractures in other people's financial armor. The Sterling family, in particular, had been remarkably easy to study. They called themselves old money, but like many families clinging to that label, their wealth was more costume than reality. Sterling Holdings survived on leverage and image, a Jenga tower of debt balance just so. Remove the right pieces and the whole structure tumbles. They made it even easier by tying so much of their life to my world without ever realizing it. Richard worked at Meridian Financial, one of the cornerstone holdings in my portfolio. He had no idea the nobody his daughter liked to mock essentially controlled his paycheck. Patricia's beloved charity boards depended heavily on grants from the Williams Foundation. Harold's last gift to me, tucked behind a name so common they never made the connection. Even their palatial home, the estate that had hosted the wedding, was mortgaged against a Sterling Holdings line of credit. A line of credit that, as of 8 a.m., was formally in default. My phone rang at 8:17. "Michael." "Mom, I just got the strangest call from Vanessa," he said, breathless. "She's crying about some financial emergency. Her dad got calls from lawyers, something about investments and loan defaults. Do you know anything about this?" I watched a cardinal carry twigs to its nest in the oak outside my window and took a sip of coffee. "How would I know anything about their affairs, sweetheart?" I asked mildly. "I'm just the charity case, remember?" "Mom, please. This isn't the time for jokes. Vanessa says they might lose everything." "That can't be true. They're loaded." "Are they?" I asked gently. "Or have they only been spending like they are?" "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means appearances can be bought with debt. And sometimes the person you think is powerless is the one holding all the cards." Silence stretched between us. "Mom, what did you do?" "I made a phone call," I said. By noon, my quiet apartment had become a command center. Years of studying financial reports had trained me to read them like mystery novels. The Sterling Holdings portfolio was a thriller. Robert called with updates every hour. "This morning was just the beginning," he said on his third call. "Meridian is reviewing employees with potential conflicts. Richard's position is unstable. As for the house, foreclosure will begin Tuesday, unless they can raise $2.3 million by end of business tomorrow. Given their current liquidity, that seems improbable." I had done my homework. Over the past 6 months, while acting the humble mother-in-law, I'd quietly acquired controlling interests in everything that propped up the Sterling's lifestyle. Not openly, that would have been traceable. Instead, through shell corporations, layered partnerships, and discrete trusts that would take forensic accountants months to untangle. And I timed it perfectly. The extravagant wedding had pushed their credit to the breaking point. The $200,000 display of wealth had been paid for almost entirely with money they did not have. All I had done was call in every obligation at once. My phone rang again. Michael's voice was more frantic this time. "Mom, they're in full panic. They're talking about selling the house, firing staff, canceling club memberships. Dad, Sterling might lose his job." "What kind of call could cause all this?" "The kind of call people get when they mistake kindness for weakness," I said. "When they forget quiet people can have very loud voices. This is about the name tag, isn't it?" "I saw it, Mom. I confronted Vanessa last night. She said it was just a joke." "A joke?" I repeated, letting the word sit heavy. "Yes. I imagine she found it very funny. Until this morning. Can't you undo it? She's devastated. She says their reputation will be destroyed. They might never recover from the shame." "Shame," I echoed. "Interesting word. And what about my shame, Michael? What about being publicly ridiculed at my own son's wedding?" "She was wrong. I know she was wrong. but ruining her whole family. Isn't that too far? I looked at Harold's photo on my kitchen counter. Your father taught me many things, I said quietly. The most important was this: respect is not given, it's earned. And sometimes it has to be taken. I haven't ruined anything, I continued. I've simply revealed what was always there. A house of cards built on borrowed time and borrowed money. Their wealth was never real. I just stopped pretending along with them. So what happens now? He asked. I studied my reflection in the window. No longer the charity case they decided I was, but the partner Harold had always treated as his equal. Now we see if your wife is interested in learning about actual charity, I said. Because if she wants her family's situation to improve, she's going to need help. And as she pointed out yesterday, I appear to be in the charity business. By Monday morning, the call I'd been waiting for finally came. Dorothy, I need to talk to you, Vanessa's voice stammered. Gone was the cool confidence. In its place was raw desperation. Could we meet for coffee? Of course, dear, I replied pleasantly. I always make time for family, even the ones who think I'm a charity case. Silence buzzed on the line. About that, she began. Let's meet at Marlowe's Diner on 5th, I cut in. 1 o'clock. I assume you know where it is. It's not exactly your usual habitat, but I'm sure you'll cope. Marlowe's was exactly what I needed. A no-frills, working-class diner where a woman like Vanessa would stand out like a peacock in a barnyard. She arrived at exactly 1, transformed. Her hair hung limp, her makeup was smeared, and it looked as though she hadn't slept. She slid into the cracked vinyl booth across from me, hands shaking as she picked up the laminated menu. Thank you for meeting me, she whispered. I don't know what to order. I've never eaten somewhere like this. The meatloaf special is very good, I said. And affordable. I imagine that matters to you now. She flinched at affordable, but nodded. Dolores, the waitress, a woman my age with exhaustion written in every line of her face, took our orders. Vanessa could barely meet her eyes. So, I said once we were alone again. What can I do for you, Vanessa? She inhaled shakily. My father's about to lose his job. We might lose the house. Everything is falling apart. And I don't understand how it happened so fast. These things don't happen fast, I said. They build up quietly like pressure behind a dam. Eventually something cracks and everything rushes out at once. Can you help us? The words sounded painful. I stirred sugar into my coffee unhurried. Help you? I'm just the charity case, remember? What could I possibly do for a family like yours? I was wrong, she blurted. About you. About everything. The name tag, it was cruel and petty and I'm ashamed. I'm so sorry. It was a beginning but hardly sufficient. What exactly are you asking me to do? I pressed. I don't know. Her lower lip trembled. Michael said you made a call that started this. That you might have connections. If there's anything you can do, I'll do anything. Anything, I repeated. Such a dangerous word. Offered to someone you've dismissed as powerless. Well, I said thoughtfully, reaching into my purse. I might know people. But charity is never truly free. There are always conditions. Hope flickered in her eyes. What kind of conditions? I unfolded a single sheet of paper and slid it across the table. I've taken the liberty of drafting a few. Nothing impossible. Just educational. Her hands trembled as she read. I watched her expression shift. Confusion, disbelief, then near horror. You want me to work as a cleaning lady for 6 months? Not just any cleaning lady, I corrected. For Sunshine Cleaning Service, the same place I worked after Harold died. Mrs. Patterson runs it. She'll show you what honest work looks like. I've never cleaned anything, she stammered. We've always had staff. Then you'll learn. Education is important, don't you agree? I took a sip of coffee, enjoying the role reversal. And the second condition, she read aloud, voice cracking, is volunteering at the homeless shelter every Saturday for a year. Doing whatever they need. The very shelter your mother's charity board claims to support, I said. You'll get to meet the people you've always helped, from a safe distance. She continued reading, color draining from her face. You want me to move into your building? A studio apartment. Just until you can afford something else on your cleaning salary. It's a good building. I live there myself. You'll become quite familiar with it. Our food arrived, giving her a moment's grace. She stared at the meatloaf as if she'd never seen food before. And if I agree, she asked quietly, you'll help my family? I'll make some calls, I said. See what can be done about those loan defaults. And perhaps I'll say a kind word about your father at his company. I paused, watching as a realization hovered in her eyes. I should probably mention, I added, that I have more influence at Meridian Financial than you'd expect from a charity case. What kind of influence? She asked, suspicion finally dawning. The kind that comes with ownership, I said lightly. Your father works in acquisitions, doesn't he? Yes, but I don't understand. Oh, I think you will. Companies like Meridian don't suddenly hemorrhage confidence unless someone powerful decides they should. Her fork slipped, clattering against her plate. What are you saying? I'm saying you should have done a bit of research on your new mother-in-law before publicly humiliating her. Due diligence is so important in any long-term relationship. She stared at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. Who are you? I'm who I've always been, I said quietly. The woman who raised your husband to be kind. The woman who has watched you treat him as a prop in your social life. And the woman now giving you a choice that will shape your future. I tapped the list. You have 24 hours. Accept my terms and I may help your family. Refuse and by Friday you'll have a front row seat to what real charity looks like when you're the one begging. Tuesday evening, I heard a knock on my apartment door. When I opened it, Richard Sterling stood there, looking like a man who'd aged a decade in 3 days. His shirt was wrinkled, his jaw unshaven, eyes hollow. Mrs. Williams, he said hoarsely. I hope you don't mind me coming without calling. I got your address from Michael. Not at all, Mr. Sterling. Come in. He stepped into my modest living room, scanning every piece of thrift store furniture and discount decor with the intensity of a drowning man searching for a life raft. Coffee? I asked. Nothing as refined as what you're used to, I'm afraid. Coffee is fine, he murmured, sinking into one of my mismatched chairs. As I poured, he cleared his throat again and again, struggling to begin. Finally, as I placed his cup before him, he spoke. I know what you did. Do you? I sat opposite him, curious. What do you think I did? You orchestrated this, he said. The investment withdrawals. The loan accelerations. My review at Meridian. Someone with enormous financial power decided to target my family, and the timing leads straight to you. His bluntness impressed me. Desperation can be clarifying. That's quite an accusation, I said mildly. Why would a woman like me have that kind of leverage? Because I spent last night tracing the corporate entities behind the withdrawals, he said. Shell companies, trusts, partnerships, but they all route back to one funding source. The Williams Foundation. Harold Williams. The same Harold Williams who built Meridian from nothing before selling it to our parent company. Silence settled between us. Harold Williams, I said slowly, was my husband. The color drained from his face. You're Dorothy Williams, he whispered. The Dorothy Williams. The widow who inherited everything. Yes, I said, setting my cup down carefully, including a controlling interest in the parent company that owns Sterling Holdings. Including the investment firm that manages your portfolio. Including, as of last year, 60% of Meridian Financial. His coffee cup slipped from his grasp and shattered on my linoleum floor. You've been playing us, he breathed. From the beginning. Not playing, I corrected. Observing. Testing. Learning what kind of people my son was marrying into. I grabbed paper towels and knelt to clean up the spill. The engagement party. The planning. The constant slights. I was studying your character, your finances, your values. I dropped the broken pieces into the trash and straightened. Do you know what I discovered? He shook his head. I discovered that your daughter wrote charity case on my name tag at her own wedding. That your wife introduced me as an embarrassment to tolerate. That your family laughed at a woman they believed had no power. I picked up my purse and took out another copy of the conditions I'd given Vanessa. But most importantly, I said, I discovered none of you ever asked who I really was. You saw what you wanted to see and never bothered to look further. "What do you want from us?" he asked, voice ragged. For the first time I smiled. "I want you to understand charity," I replied. "Not the kind you perform at galas, but the kind where someone with power chooses to help someone who has none." I held up the paper. "Your daughter has until tomorrow to decide. I suggest you advise her to accept." The next afternoon, Vanessa arrived at my apartment with Michael at her side. He looked torn apart, confused, wounded, struggling to reconcile the mother he thought he knew with the woman he was now facing. "Mom," he said as they sat on my old couch, "Vanessa told me about your conditions. This is insane. You can't expect her to be a cleaning lady." "Why not?" I asked. "It's honest work. I did it myself for 2 years after your father died, before I fully realized what he'd left me." Vanessa's eyes widened. "You really cleaned houses?" "Every day," I said. "Scrubbed toilets, mopped floors, dusted furniture for people who barely saw me." It was humbling. It also taught me more about people than any boardroom ever has. "What did it teach you?" Michael asked. "That how you treat people you think are beneath you tells the truth about who you are." I looked straight at Vanessa. "Your charity case mother-in-law has been cleaning up other people's messes most of her life," I said quietly. "The difference now is that I choose whose messes are worth my time." Vanessa's voice shook. "I accept your conditions." "Vanessa," Michael began. She lifted a hand. "No, Michael. She's right. I've been awful to your mother. If this is what it takes to fix what I've done, I'll do it." "And the apartment?" I asked. "Trading comfort for a studio on a cleaner's salary?" "I'll take it," she said, tears spilling. "All of it. I was wrong about everything. I thought money made me better than other people. But when it disappeared, I realized I don't know how to do anything." I watched her carefully, searching for manipulation. I saw fear, yes, but also a raw, earnest sincerity. "This isn't punishment," I said. "It's schooling. You're going to learn empathy, humility, the dignity of work. Things money can't buy. And you'll really help my family," she whispered. "If I do this, I'll do more than help," I said. "I'll restore what they've lost and then some. Your father will keep his job at Meridian and receive a promotion. Your parents will keep their home. Their reputation will be repaired." Michael stared at me as if he'd never seen me before. "How can you promise that?" I went to my desk and took out a folder I had been saving for this day. "Because," I said, spreading documents across the coffee table, "I own the companies involved. All of them." He scanned the paperwork. Corporate registries, banking statements, portfolio summaries, until the sheer scale of the numbers made him sink back in shock. "The Williams Foundation controls over $12 billion in assets," I said evenly. "I hold majority stakes in 17 major corporations, including Meridian Financial, Sterling Holdings' parent company, and most of the banks threatening foreclosure." Vanessa stared at the papers as if they were written in another language. "You could have stopped this any time," she said faintly. "Of course," I said. "But then how would you have learned anything? This was a test, the most important one of your life. And you failed spectacularly when you wrote charity case on my name tag." I let that sink in. "But failure doesn't have to be final," I continued. "Sometimes it's where real learning starts." "Mom, why didn't you ever tell me?" Michael asked quietly. "Because I needed you to love me, not my balance sheet," I replied. "Money changes how people look at you. They stop seeing a person and start seeing an opportunity. I had to know my family cared about Dorothy the woman, not Dorothy the billionaire." I glanced around the room, my humble furniture, my old car key on the hook, my simple life. "This is why I live like this," I said. "Because true wealth isn't what you spend. It's the choices you can make and the lives you can change." 6 months later, I stood in the gleaming lobby of Meridian Financial and watched Vanessa scrub the marble floor. Her manicured nails were long gone. Her hands were reddened, knuckles rough. The tailored designer dresses had been replaced by the basic blue uniform of Sunshine Cleaning Service, worn not with shame, but with a quiet, surprising pride. "Mrs. Williams," she said, looking up breathless. "I didn't know you'd be here." "I had a board meeting upstairs," I said. "Thought I'd see how you're adjusting." She sat back on her heels, wiping perspiration from her brow. It's hard work, she said. But I'm changing. Mrs. Patterson says I'm good at this. Detail work. Who knew? I did, I replied. You always had an eye for perfection. It just needed something meaningful to focus on. In the months since the wedding, I'd watched her slowly transform. The brittle socialite had given way to someone more thoughtful, less entitled, someone discovering, maybe for the first time, what it meant to respect people whose names would never appear on donor walls. How's the homeless shelter? I asked. Her face brightened, a light I'd never seen in her before. Wonderful, she said. There's a little girl, Maria, who comes with her mom every Saturday. She's teaching me Spanish. I help her with homework. I didn't know I could care so much about someone I would have ignored a year ago. And the apartment? Small but cozy, she said. I'll actually miss it when the 6 months end. If you still plan to keep your side of the bargain. I smiled and reached into my purse, pulling out a sealed envelope. Your father's promotion was approved this morning, I said. Senior Vice President of Acquisitions. Substantial raise. Better benefits. Her hand shook as she read the letter. How did you? I told you, I said simply. I own the company. And your parents' house? It's being placed into a family trust. It won't be at risk from creditors again. Consider it my wedding gift. Tears carved clean lines down her dusty cheeks. Why? She asked. After how I treated you? Because you passed the only test that mattered, I said. Not the one you failed at the wedding, but the one where you chose to change instead of hiding behind excuses. I helped her to her feet. Character isn't about never falling, I said. It's about who you decide to become after you've hit the floor. For the first time, she met my eyes without flinching or performing. As an equal. The charity case, she said softly, turned out to be the one giving charity. That's how it should work, I answered. Those who have the most help those who need it most. I needed to know you were worth that effort. You needed to discover who you could be when all the props were stripped away. As I walked toward the elevator, she called out, Dorothy, will you come to dinner on Sunday? I'm cooking. For the first time. It probably won't be good, but... I turned, smiling. I'd be honored, I said. We are family after all. Real family. The kind built on respect and love, not obligation and show. The elevator doors slid shut, but through the glass I watched her return to her work with renewed purpose. She had learned the most valuable lesson I could give her. True wealth isn't measured in bank balances, but in the lives you change and the people you lift. At my son's wedding, his bride labeled me the charity case and expected laughter. What she received instead was an education. Sometimes the sharpest revenge is not destruction, but helping someone become the person they were always capable of being. And sometimes the greatest charity we can offer is the chance for another, and ourselves, to discover the depth of our own grace. Thanks for listening. Subscribe if you'd like to hear more, and share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.